All right, Alexander, let's talk about this business with French mercenaries that allegedly Russia Russia annihilated 60, 61, or 67 French mercenaries that were staying at a hotel in Kharkov. And the interesting part about this story is that the messaging coming out of Paris is all jumbled, and one story contradicts another story. And it looks like the Macron administration hasn't quite been able to figure out how to explain away this Russian strike on this hotel where allegedly these French mercenaries were staying, or where much of the command operations were being housed. Just real quick, the foreign ministry came out with a statement and said there are no French mercenaries or French fighters in any country. And then the defense ministry came out with a statement right after the foreign ministry put out their statement, and it said, well, we do have French citizens fighting in various parts of the world, but they have no connection to the French military whatsoever. And we're a democracy, and we can't stop people from going to fight in other countries. So what to make of this news about the French fighters?
Yeah, this is a very interesting story. I mean, it is very interesting because, as you said, there are divergent reports coming out from Paris. I think the first thing to say is that there's no doubt at all that this incident did take place, and that dozens and dozens of French people were killed in this strike on the hotel in Kharkiv. And we're starting to get names of people who were killed. And they're very interesting. I mean, so there is no real issue about this. There were a lot of people from France in that hotel. The Russians appear to have deliberately targeted them, and many of them were killed. So that's the first point to say. Now, the other thing that has happened, and it is actually extraordinary, and I don't think it's getting the attention it deserves, is that the foreign ministry in Moscow, the Russian foreign ministry, called in the French ambassador. And the French ambassador came to the foreign ministry, and he was there for several hours, and he left, and there were journalists outside, reporters, principally Russian, and they tried to ask him questions, and he just strode past. He wouldn't answer any questions. Now, there have been mercenaries from various countries, or at least nationals from various countries, fighting in Ukraine now for a long time. Why did the Russians single out France in this particular way to call in the French ambassador? And what was it exactly that they discussed with him? And then we get this very, very strange series of contradictory statements from the French. We don't have any mercenaries. There are no French mercenaries anywhere in the world. Well, that's, by the way, because French law apparently now forbids mercenary companies. So that's the first thing to say. So French saying that. And then as soon as they say that, they then admit that there are actually French nationals fighting in Ukraine. So contradictory statements, no real explanation of what's happened, no real explanation provided to the French people about what happened. But then a very, very strange statement from Emmanuel Macron. He says that France and Russia are not at war, but that France and the West can't allow Russia to win in Ukraine. Now, why does he have to point out that France and Russia are not at war? I mean, it's unusual. Now, I'm getting lots of reports. There's lots of reports about this, but there is something which I would place at much higher than a rumour. I think that there is information coming through, and I'm choosing my words very, very carefully, that these people in that hotel were actually principally people drawn from the French Foreign Legion, There were a number of French intelligence officers there. In other words, they were trained professional French army troops that they had arranged, there'd been an arrangement with the French government whereby they broke their contracts with the French Foreign Legion and were sent to Ukraine. But in practice, the French government continued to pay them salaries and that their operations continued to be coordinated by French intelligence, and that they were operating from this hotel in Kharkiv, and that some of these people, some of the soldiers apparently, being from the Foreign Legion, are ethnic Ukrainians and Russians and Belarusians, but highly trained in the Foreign Legion, that they were conducting special operations behind the Russian lines and even in Russia itself.